The night was pitch black, with only the occasional hoot of an owl breaking the eerie silence. A thick fog clung to the ground like a ghostly blanket, making it impossible to see beyond a few feet. Legends of a haunted jungle had always been whispered in hushed tones, but no one dared venture into its depths after dark until tonight. The old villagers called it Boot Ban, the haunted jungle, located on the outskirts of a small, forgotten village. It was a place of dark tales and ominous warnings. For years, people had vanished without a trace after entering the dense woods, never to be seen again. But to Ashok, a thrill-seeking young man with a thirst for adventure, these were just exaggerated stories meant to scare children. One fateful evening, fueled by a reckless determination to debunk the myth, Ashok decided to enter Boot Ban. Armed with nothing but a flashlight and his phone, his friends had tried to dissuade him, but their fears only added to his excitement. The thought of uncovering the truth thrilled him more than any horror story ever could. The path leading into the jungle was narrow and overgrown, as though nature itself was trying to hide whatever lay beyond. The air was heavy with the scent of damp earth and decaying leaves. As Ashok ventured deeper, the usual sounds of the jungle, chirping crickets, rustling leaves, seemed to fade away, replaced by an unsettling silence. Every step he took felt like a step into another world, one that was cold, ancient, and filled with unseen eyes watching his every move. The flashlight's beam struggled to penetrate the thick fog that had begun to rise, swirling around his ankles like something alive. The deeper he went, the more he realized that the jungle was unlike anything he had imagined. Trees twisted in unnatural ways, their gnarled branches resembling outstretched arms. The underbrush seemed to thicken and tangle, as if trying to ensnare him. Shadows moved in the corners of his vision, but whenever he turned to look, there was nothing there, just the overwhelming sense of being watched. Suddenly, a faint light flickered ahead. Curiosity piqued. Ashok moved towards it. The light seemed to hover just out of reach, leading him further into the heart of the jungle. As he followed, strange symbols etched into the bark of the trees began to appear, symbols that he couldn't understand but felt an overwhelming sense of dread about. The light eventually led him to a small clearing where a decrepit old temple stood. The stone structure was covered in moss and vines, its entrance a dark, gaping mouth that seemed to swallow all light. Despite the growing fear gnawing at his insides, Ashok couldn't resist entering. Inside, the air was cold, and the walls were lined with faded paintings depicting horrifying scenes, human sacrifices, demonic rituals, and shadowy figures with glowing eyes. The floor was littered with the remnants of old offerings, broken pottery, rusted trinkets, and what looked like charred bones. As Ashok inspected the eerie surroundings, the flickering light reappeared, this time coming from a small carved idol in the center of the temple. The idol was of a deity he didn't recognize. Its face was a twisted snarl, its eyes hollow, and its hands outstretched as if ready to grab whoever approached. Compelled by an unseen force, Ashok reached out to touch the idol. The moment his fingers brushed against the cold stone, the ground beneath him trembled, and a deafening roar echoed through the temple. He stumbled back, his heart pounding as the walls seemed to close in around him. Without warning, the temple door slammed shut, trapping him inside. The light from his flashlight flickered before going out, completely plunging him into darkness. Panic set in as he fumbled with his phone, only to find that it had stopped working. Then the whispers started. Low, unintelligible murmurs that seemed to come from all directions at once. They grew louder, more insistent, until they filled his mind, drowning out all coherent thought. Ashok felt something cold brush against his neck, and when he turned, he saw them shadows, no longer hiding, but fully formed and advancing towards him. These were not mere figments of his imagination. They were the spirits of those who had vanished into the jungle before him, eyes glowing with an unearthly light, their faces twisted in agony. They reached out for him with skeletal hands, their whispers now a cacophony of torment and despair. Ashok tried to run, but his legs wouldn't move. The air around him seemed to thicken, pressing down on him like a vice. The shadows closed in, their cold fingers grazing his skin, draining him of warmth and life. Desperate, he forced his legs to move and ran blindly through the temple, searching for an escape. He slammed into the walls, his breath ragged and shallow, but there was no way out. The whispers grew louder, now accompanied by the echoing sound of footsteps his own, but distorted, as if he was being followed by something that mirrored his every move. In a final, desperate attempt, Ashok hurled himself at the temple door. It didn't budge, but the force knocked him to the ground. As he lay there, the shadows descended upon him, their icy grip pulling him into the darkness. The last thing he saw was the twisted idol, its hollow eyes glowing with a sinister light as the shadows consumed him. And then there was silence. The jungle was still once more, as if nothing had ever happened. The fog slowly dissipated, revealing the now abandoned clearing where the temple stood. The door creaked open, but there was no sign of Ashok, only the distant echo of whispers carried away by the wind. The next morning, when the villagers noticed Ashok hadn't returned, they knew what had happened. They knew the jungle had claimed another soul, and so the legend of Bhutban grew. Another chapter added to its tale of terror. The jungle remained, waiting for the next curious soul who would dare to venture into its haunted depths.